Judy Sarden here with Classical School at Home. Today I'm going to do a review on Michael Clay Thompson's Language Arts program that's published by Royal Fireworks Press. I have really enjoyed this program. When I was researching it, I really couldn't find a lot about it online. I couldn't find very many in-depth reviews, so I'm doing an in-depth review for anyone who might be interested in going towards that program. Now, if you go to Royal Fireworks Press's website, you'll need to click on the Michael Clay Thompson series, and under that you'll find a several-step language arts program. What I love about the program is that it covers not only grammar, it covers sentence writing, sentence structure, parts of speech, that sort of thing, but incorporated in that is a poetry aspect. I love the poetry component, and just so you know, I hated all things that had to do with poetry when I was in school. Elementary school, high school, college, anything that had to do with poetry, I hated it. I really don't like it today, honestly, but I have learned a new appreciation for poetry because of the way Michael Clay Thompson presents it in this language arts program. So you have, in addition to those components, you have a language builder, kind of roots and Greek and Latin roots component to it as well. So let's get started on all the components. Now, I'll tell you up front that if you need a program that is hands-off, this is not the program for you. If you need a program that it takes a short period of time to do every day, this may not be the program for you. If you need a program that's scripted, this is definitely not the program for you. I used a scripted program before and it just didn't work. It was a program that was very scripted, and it required a lot of memory work and copy work and dictation, which I really like theoretically, but that approach didn't work for my kids. So this is my third language arts program that I've used. We've been using it now for about 9 months, and it really works for my kids. So the first aspect of it is Grammar Island. This is for the level 1, which is recommended for 3rd grade. I started my son in about 2nd grade and a half. I felt like he was ready. We had really horrible success with other programs, and I was just grasping at straws at this point. So I went ahead and ordered it, and it ended up working. So the first component of Michael Clay Thompson's series is called, this is level 1, it's called Grammar Island. Now, most grammar books, at least the ones that I've seen so far, you learn what the parts of speech are, you learn a noun as a person, place, or thing, you learn, and then you start doing examples of what is a noun. You pick them out of a sentence. You come up with examples of a person, a place, or a thing. Well, Michael Clay Thompson takes a totally different approach, and it's almost like a story. In fact, it actually is a story where you learn about the parts of speech along the way. It's very whimsical. This is like a storybook. It's like a curl up on the couch and read a few pages of a story to your kid. My kids love it. They like the cuddle time anyway, but they love it because it's fun. Like, we actually end up laughing during grammar. My daughter, who's 2 grades below my son, has asked to start it after my son's gotten out of this book because she heard us having so much fun doing grammar. And I know fun and grammar are like an oxymoron, but in this case, it really is fun. So I will just give you an example of some of the things. Let's talk about it. Here's what the book looks like. The way it's laid out. We're talking about adjectives here, but look at the page. It's fun. It has pretty pictures on it. And it's very whimsical. So here's an example. I'm going to read this page for you. Here's an example. He says, "So anyway, this hungry pelican flew along the shore one morning, looking into the water for a tasty adjective to eat. Look in the water, too, and see if you can find a tasty adjective for the hungry pelican." Now, by the time you've gone over adjectives, you've also gone over, sorry, my computer went dead for a second. You've also gone over nouns and pronouns, and then adjectives are the third part of speech that you would have covered. So we've got some pronouns circled also in this little water here. But the kids really have a good time. And then he goes on. After he ate the adjective, the pelican wanted some yummy pronouns. How many can you find for him? Go back and look. And so as I'm reading through it, I basically just read a few pages, depending on how long the section is, depending on how well my child is grasping the concept. We usually only do a few pages a day, and it's really a discussion. I make sure that they understand it because it's not like your typical grammar book. Then at the end of each section, here we have, he has kids, as we're going over each section, he breaks them up with these little kind of tests. Now this is the teacher's manual. I only ordered the teacher's manual, all of these books, except for the practice book where the kids have to write through it, because the student book looks exactly like the teacher book except for these study tips here, and then the child's book would have the sentence but not the parts of speech under it. I just cover it up with a piece of paper whenever we get to it, because not ordering the student book saves a tremendous amount of money, and it's exactly the same except for just a few things on a few pages. Like on this page, the only thing that's different again are just these two little bubbles and then the parts of speech underneath. But then the kids and I will sit on the couch and we'll go over each word. We'll discuss what each word is, as opposed to just sitting them down, kind of going over it, sitting them down, having them go for it on a worksheet or something. This is a zero worksheet program. So again, if you need worksheets, if you need something you can give to the kids so that they can just run off and do it themselves, this is not the program for you. So it goes on. It really emphasizes, Michael Clay Thompson really emphasizes that there are two parts of every sentence. Every sentence has a subject, every sentence has a predicate. Subject is a noun, predicate starts with a verb, and then things are built around it. You have your prepositional phrases and things like that. But he really breaks it down very simplistically. He talks about over and over again how fun it is and how wonderful grammar is. And you really become convinced that grammar is fun and grammar really is interesting, and oh my gosh, this is so cool. So here's one of the little stories. He has these little stories that are also really neat, that the kids look forward to getting to the stories. I'll read this one to you. And again, this is just like the kids' book. The only difference is this little square. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little action verb named Mew. Mew wanted to do what was right, and so she looked everywhere for a noun to be about. In the deep forest, Mew saw the noun bear. "Bear!" Mew cried. "Can I be about you?" "Certainly not," roared Bear. So Mew went away. In the deep sea, Mew saw the noun whale. "Whale!" cried Mew. "Can I be about you?" And then it goes on, and then at the end, and then under a rowboat, Mew saw the noun kitten. "Hi, kitten," said Mew. "Can I be about you?" You?" said Kitten. "Me and you." From then on, the kitten mewed. And so they have these really cute little stories throughout the book that are really awesome for driving home, and what you do whenever whatever the word is doesn't match with the people that he first tries to play with. You discuss it with the kids. Well, why doesn't that work? Sometimes it could be a subject, a verb agreement issue, or whatever it is. You sit there and you talk it over with the kid and discuss why it doesn't work and why the last one does work, of course. So it's just a lot of fun. The children love it, and I have to say that they really have grasped the parts of speech using this approach. Throughout the book, Michael Clay Thompson colors. Each part of speech gets a different color, as you can see. So it's kind of as the kids are learning. As the kids are learning, then they can kind of, I know action verbs, or I know verbs are red, I know nouns are blue, to kind of help them along as they're learning. But eventually they learn them without the color coding, and it's just a lot of fun. In the back of the book, he has several. The back of the book is really the meat of the teacher's manual here, because he has several exercises for you to try, stories to have your kid write if your child is there. My kid really wasn't there as far as writing the kind of stories that he recommends. So I just come up with different types of stories. He'll give you a list of all the different parts of speech, tell you to pick a word from each different part of speech, and then put together a sentence using those words, or put together a story. And it really just depends. I've read that some people think that the writing assignments are a little much. It's supposed to be for gifted kids. I don't know that my kids are gifted. I know that they've really thrived with this program. Some of the writing assignments rather, are a little abstract. So I've just substituted them for something that's more appropriate to where my kids are, kind of trying to use the same concept. So to me, it's okay. So the way that he has it set up, he wants you to complete Grammar Island first. It took us a long time to get through Grammar Island, perhaps because I started my son young. I just really wanted to make sure he had a solid grasp on the grammar aspect, because we'd been so unsuccessful with 2 other programs, and we don't do grammar every day either. So it took us, I've seen some people say they read through the book in 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe that's for an advanced child, maybe someone who's older, but for my 7-year-old, it took us a few months to get through Grammar Island. After you finish with Grammar Island, he then wants you to go to Practice Island. Practice Island is a series of 100 sentences. Now, in Grammar Island, Michael Clay Thompson teaches you a different way of diagramming sentences, which I really like. I think it's really helpful. I hated the way we diagram sentences in school. I never actually could understand it, but this way I do. So I can teach it. So this one here you have, like here's sentence 30. It's a very simple sentence. The fox smells something fishy in the salty wind. And oh, by the way, everything has the same kind of fish nautical theme. Now, Practice Island is the only book that I purchased that was a student book, because they had to write in it. Technically, you don't even have to purchase Practice Island. You could just give the kid a notebook, and every day they get use the notebook. You give them the sentence from the teacher's manual. But I didn't want to do that, so I didn't want to be bothered with that. Here's a teacher's manual for Practice Island, which I had to have. With the teacher's manual, you have all the answers. So the way the diagram sentences is as follows. The first line is where you're simply identifying all the parts of speech. On the second line, you're identifying the subject, the predicate, whether it's an action verb predicate or a linking verb predicate, and you are identifying whether there's a direct object, an indirect object, or a subject complement. Now, this is a very complicated sentence here. It's got it all. Most of them are not this difficult. The next line, you are identifying whether there are any prepositional phrases. And in the fourth line, you are identifying whether you have 1 or 2 independent clauses, and therefore whether it's a compound or a simple declarative sentence. I don't think there are any questions in this. And then he has a comment at the bottom to help you guide the student with really understanding how to analyze the sentence. So you start Practice Island. after you have completed Grammar Island. By the time you've completed Grammar Island, you should be a whiz at this, or at least know how to do it, and then by the time you finish with the 100 sentences, then you will be a whiz. So those are two aspects of it. Now, the third one is Sentence Island. My son has gone through Grammar Island. We're working through Practice Island, and now we are also working through Sentence Island, which is next. And Sentence Island, really, it's a pretty thick book. But you're basically reiterating everything that you learned in Grammar Island, but you're going so much deeper. You're going so much deeper, and it is written in a story format, and it literally is. So I'm going to read an excerpt. This is Oopsie I think he's a crane, or a pelican. Oopsie the pelican talking to Mud the fish. "These are called the parts of the sentence," said Oopsie, "and there's more to follow, Fred. But we'll fly with this fact. A sentence has a structure with parts that are connected." And then he goes on, and during the dialogue between Oopsie and Mud the fish, Oopsie keeps calling Mud Fred, and Mud keeps getting irritated, and they kind of bicker a little bit, and it's hilarious. It really is funny, and my son loves the story. So it's a long story where Mud the fish is trying to figure out, okay, he's learned the stuff in Grammar Island, but now he's really trying to understand how to put a sentence together. And so he's talking to different animals on the island, and they are helping him to really understand how to write a very good sentence. And it's here's another excerpt. "Mud realized that 2 silly pelicans isn't a sentence. It could be a subject. But what about these silly pelicans?" So Mud thought, and then he tried 2 predicates. So that's exactly how it is. There's no worksheet, there's no test. It's really just you sit there with your child and you read a couple of pages, you discuss the information as it was presented on the pages until you kind of have a sense that they understand, and then you move on. So it would be a very difficult program to implement if you need something that's scripted. I would not recommend it for someone who needs something scripted. Really, it will drive you crazy. Okay, so then we have 2 more components. Again, all of these only teacher manuals. I did not order the student books. The next one is the music of the Hemispheres. This is the poetry book. Now, what I love about Michael Clay Thompson's program is that the Grammar Island flowed into Sentence Island. You have the same, they're talking about the same thing, you have the same characters. In Music of the Hemispheres, which is the poetry component, he's using the same words, he brings up the same kind of grammar things in the same way. So he's tying everything together using the same words. He'll even mention some of the alliteration or some of the poetry terms that you find in Music of the Hemispheres in Sentence Island or Grammar Island. So you hear the words in all of the books, even in the language builder books. In the language builder book, you'll hear the same parts of speech, you'll hear the same things mentioned, and I think that's one thing that really helps to drive it home to the child, because they see these things that they're learning in different settings, if you will. Now, this poetry book is absolutely amazing. So I have a law degree, so I've done a whole lot of writing in my life, studied writing a whole lot, and I'm learning stuff in these books that I never learned before. So I really like it. He talks about sounds, how to use different sounds to make things sound splashy, or words, and we've already learned about onomatopoeia, stanza, alliteration, all kinds of things in this book. He has lots of examples. He's written his own poetry in here. It's really a wonderful poetry book, and just like the others, it's more of a storybook. It's not like a textbook. It's just more like a storybook. He challenges the child to write some of their own poetry. And my son has never really liked poetry, and I will admit that it probably has to do with his mother who doesn't like poetry. But, we all have really enjoyed the poetry book. Now, the last component of Michael Clay Thompson's series is the building language book. And true to his form, he spends several pages talking about aqueducts in Rome and arches. And we've learned more about arches in this book than we ever would have learned in anything else at this point. And he brings this up, and the arches and the aqueducts, he brings all this stuff up to show how language is like the aqueducts. It's like the arches, and how the pieces of language put together build the actual language. And it sounds very high level, and it might sound kind of way out in left field, but the way he does it is really beautiful. And then in this book, in the building language, this is the level 1 book, of course, he covers a few, maybe, 20 or so prefixes, parts of speech, Greek, Latin types of roots, and it's kind of like a starter. In the next level, I've read that it really steps up in the next level. This whole set is the introductory level, the 3rd grade, kind of just getting your foot in the water level. So, altogether, these are all the Michael Clay Thompson books that I use. Again, I use teacher's manuals for everything, and the only component that I used the student manual for was the practice island, and you don't really have to use a student book. You can just use a notebook and write the sentences out of the teacher's book. This program has worked wonders for a child who he couldn't grasp it with our memory copy work dictation program that we used before. We then switched to a more workbooky program where he was doing circle the verb, underline the adjective, fill in the blank here, that sort of thing. After doing that for those 2 programs for about a year and a half, I had him take a standardized test and realized he hadn't learned anything. So I'd say February, this is October, I switched over to Michael Clay Thompson, and I've seen a tremendous difference. It just clicks. He understands it. He grasps it now. So, Michael Clay Thompson is going to run you for the 5 books. Oh, also he has since I purchased this set, he's also published a literature component. So, there you have the whole thing, where he's written books that contain his philosophy is that there are, 100 words that you need to know and understand in order to be able to read classic literature. And so he has written a series of 3 books called the Mud series. Mud is the fish that you see throughout these books, who's talking and learning about parts of the sentence. So he's published the Mud trilogy, and those books contain all these words that children should learn in order to read classical literature. Also, as part of the Mud series, I don't have them. I would like them. Maybe I could get them maybe in a few months, maybe for Christmas, but I don't have them yet. As part of the Mud series, all the new vocabulary words have annotations at the bottom of the page, and also on the pages themselves, he will bring up some of the things that you've learned in the poetry book, or some of the things that you've learned in the grammar or the sentence island book. So again, everything that he writes in each series all ties together and makes for a wonderfully enriching language arts program, I think. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful if you are considering Michael Clay Thompson. It's been a great program for us, and I hope that you think it's great too.